Welcome to Ceasefire, where civics meet civility and engagement meets empowerment. Ceasefire is hosted by former Boerne ISD trustee and owner of the Boerne Bookshop, Dale Adams, and by former Boerne City Council member and local insurance agent, Ron Cisneros.
Good morning, Kendall County. This is Ceasefire. My name is Dale Adams.
I'm Ron Cisneros.
And today we're going to talk about something different. We usually don't talk about current hot topics, but we're going to talk about Charlie Kirk today.
Yeah, it's relevant, and we need to. Charlie Kirk is a reminder of the importance of civility and having those tough discussions that we used to be able to have in this country and that we don't do anymore. We don't engage each other anymore. We avoid each other.
And that's one of the things that we are trying to work on here on this show.
That's
is
the basis
engaging
of the
conversation, getting people involved in civil manner. And here's somebody who epitomized that almost from his perspective. He went out there and debated everybody and anybody that opposed him.
Yeah.
And he was there in the mix of it. And he went to the most controversial places and discussed controversial topics with people opposed to him, not people that agreed with him all the time.
And I think that's important. A lot of my friends, a lot of my fellow conservatives are upset, and that, and that's understandable, and it's okay to be angry about it. What I don't think is okay is for us to let that anger turn to hatred and to begin to shut people out that do not agree with us. To say, and I've seen this multiple times, anytime something bad happens, you get on social media, which I think less of each and every day. I need it for my business. I need it to promote this radio show. But I'm truly at a point where I despise it. But we get angry about something. We get on Facebook and we say, well, if you feel differently about this, or if you're celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, unfollow me, unfriend me.
Yeah.
And I want to say right now that if you are okay with what happened, don't unfollow me, don't unfriend me, listen to me, and I'm going to listen to you, and I want to gain understanding. I want to know why you feel that way. You're right, Charlie went out onto the college campuses, and he was met with hostility, but he responded with grace, and he invited people to talk to him, to ask him tough questions. And he did not wither. He did not run away. He did not say unfollow me. He did not say unfriend me. He listened, and he responded.
And in fact, at that moment, in that instant, the person sitting across from him, debating him, was somebody from the other side.
Yes.
He was involved in a discussion with somebody with a completely opposite view than he had. And he was engaging them, and he was having them ask him questions. And they were asking him questions, and they were talking about violence. And so, yes, I think that's really big of you not to push people away. I think that's really what we should be doing. We should say, come talk to me. Let's discuss this.
Yeah.
If you agree with something that I don't agree with, let's just talk about it. We don't have to agree.
Right.
And I think that's one thing people have a difficult time with. They feel that we should always agree. And when somebody doesn't agree, it's all bad and horrible. And we start calling names. One of our first shows was about name calling.
Yeah.
And I did my little spiel of chains, and I'm going to say it again, and I don't remember if this is exactly what I said last time. But one of the things I talked about was that stereotypes lead to bias, bias leads to tribalism, and if you encourage tribalism, it leads to dehumanization. And then I left the last part. I said, what does dehumanization lead to? And this is where it's at. We're all human. We all have emotions. We all react to things. But we have to restrain those reactions. We have to resist the urge to call people names. We have to resist the urge to say that person has no soul. I hear that a lot, and it frustrates me when I hear it because I'm like, no, they all have a soul, even if they disagree with me, or they have a difficult life or they've done terrible things. They all have a soul, and we just need to get back to just realizing that we're all humans.
Right. I have a couple examples of some responses, and these are not from Democrats. These are from Republicans. responding to what they've seen on Facebook from others. And I'm not throwing this out there to, because these are coming from my friends, right? So I'm not throwing this out there to embarrass them or speak poorly of them, but I want a lesson to be taught here about how we should respond, right? Yeah. So here's one response. If the left isn't careful, we'll become all the vile things they falsely accuse us of being. And I thought, well, are you saying that, if they're saying that we're monsters and that we're evil and that we're racist, that because somebody else did something vile, that we are going to become vile too? We're going to become the very thing which we've said we are not?
Yeah.
How logical is that? Why would you do that?
Well, I want to throw something in on that because that is one of my big fears. And throughout my adult life, I've seen people that I disagree with do some terrible things. I see the riots, I see the violence, and it's generally things that I disagree with. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, I am afraid of the day that the people that I agree with take on those tactics.
Mm-hmm.
And generally in history, when that's happened, and it has happened a couple times, there's been this sort of revulsion and rejection of that. So I don't know if you remember the Oklahoma bombing.
Yeah.
But that happened during a height of the buildup of these militias, all these different state militias, and these people who went out and hunted, or not hunted, but they did their training and their camo and all this stuff. When that bombing happened, that whole cultural drive sort of fell away because all these people realized that, oh, wow, okay, this guy was sort of part of our circles and he did something just incredibly terrible. So the militia movement sort of died away. But there may come a point where it doesn't die away, when something terrible is done in the name of what I agree with. And that's what I fear. And partially I also fear it because a lot of people on my side have guns, and I don't want them to ever decide that they need to use those to make an argument.
Right. I've said at times too that I never liked the response from our side when we've said, well, they do that too. You know, and we need to fight like they fight. And,
right. I don't agree with that. Yeah.
And I've seen that movement really in the last 10 years that, well, we never respond the way that they do. We don't do the same tactics that they do. And here lately, we've sort of embraced that idea that we should be confrontational. I'm like, no, I don't want to be any of those things.
But where I think that sort of came from was under George Bush. A lot of accusations were made against him, and he never really responded.
Yes.
And I remember being angry that he did not confront the people that accused him of things or said bad things about him and address the issue in a forceful way. Not force-wise, but verbally.
Right.
And that, I think, started a trend among conservatives to say, we need somebody more forceful.
We need to quit being pushovers.
And I think that's one of the things that sort of set off this drift that we've seen.
So here's another danger, and I'm going to share another comment, and I think this is important because we've done shows before on logical fallacies, and here's a logical fallacy. So here's the quote here: anyone who supports the scumbag Democrats in any way supports this. That's a sweeping generalization.
Yeah, it is.
And I've seen a lot of that in the last few days, and it frustrates me because my dad's side of the family, they're like probably 80-something% Republican now, but my grandfather and grandmother were Democrats, and so there's still a few Democrats in there. And I count among my friends Democrats, and they're great people, and I know that they do not abide by this. They do not support this murder. They are calling it vile in the same way that I'm calling it vile. And so to sit there and say, well, if you haven't posted your disgust about this, then you're with them, or to go and do these, to call them scumbags because they're simply Democrats.
Yeah, I think that gets to something, the sports team analogy that frequently people don't recognize. A lot of people are either Democrats or Republicans based on their family history, their community, and it doesn't necessarily have something to do with their personal ideology. Most people are apolitical. They're like, you know what? I just want to get on with my life. My family's this party, and so I'm this party. It's important to realize that not everybody is as ideological as what we see on TV. I mean, TV promotes it. They push it, and the social media pushes it, and they want to polarize as much as possible. And we need to recognize that there are people that want to polarize us. It makes them money.
Right.
And so we need to recognize that we're not as polarized as it appears.
Yeah.
I hope.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So I want to talk about Charlie a little bit. I read a lot. I don't watch a lot of television. I don't get into podcasts. And I'm not I'm more of a reader, less of a TV person, less of a YouTube person. But I was familiar with Charlie in the same way that I'm familiar with people like Ben Shapiro and others like that. And I will admit that when I'd see something come up on Instagram, I'd watch it. I was always amazed at his ability to just say things from his mind. I mean, it's a brilliant mind, and just I could never remember anything like that. I mean, just to come into and do this show, I've got to write down all of these notes and just so I can remember what I want to talk about. But what I was most impressed with, I think a lot of people think of Charlie Kirk as like I've heard people describe him as a far right, conservative, MAGA follower, or this, that, and the other, and he always tends to get painted with a political brush.
Yeah.
But before he was anything else, he was a Christian. God came first in his life, and he spoke about God continuously. And I think that's missed a lot. I think it's missed by even people on the Republican side. You know, we go in there and we listen to Charlie Kirk, and we're like, oh yeah, and it's like, wait, but he's all grounded in Christ.
Yeah.
That comes first. And I respected that a lot. You don't see that a lot. And that Christ-centeredness of him kept him humble. He operated with a lot of grace. And if you go back and you watch his debates with these students, sometimes the descriptions are wrong on Instagram or YouTube. Like, you'll see something that says, Charlie totally demolished this student. Right?
Yes, I see that.
It's
I
like,
hate it.
no, he didn't.
Yeah.
No, he didn't. He operated with complete grace, fully convicted. He didn't back down on what he believed. Yeah. He's fully convicted in the truth. But he operated with grace and kindness, and he really did strive to listen, which is something you talk a lot about. You embrace through your role in Toastmasters and all that. I mean, he really strived to listen to these young people.
Yeah, and that's important.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point. That's I don't know a whole lot about him. I didn't follow him. I don't do social media. I don't watch TV much, or I don't watch the news. Honestly, I get my news through old school newspapers and stuff. So I sit down and I read it and I consume it at the pace that I decide that I want to consume it at. And so I didn't follow him that much. I knew he seemed to be having a big impact, especially on campuses, because he went to where the controversy was.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break here. This is Ceasefire with Dale and Ron, and I'll come back with whatever I was thinking about then. Boerne has its own bookshop. In fact, it's called the Boerne Bookshop. Hi, I'm Dale Adams, inviting you to get lost. Get lost in a good book in our relaxed and casual atmosphere. We have a wide and eclectic selection in the Boerne Bookshop, and we pride ourselves on finding what you're looking for. We do author meet and greets, host writing workshops, and can connect you with a good book club. And your young ones will absolutely love our kids section at the Boerne Bookshop. And while we want you to get lost, we're easy to find, as we're in the heart of Boerne at the back of the Richter Tavern building. We are the Boerne Bookshop. Welcome back to Ceasefire with Dale and Ron. I think I have my thoughts back. And we're talking about Charlie Kirk today, and a little bit of reminiscing, but mainly just sort of discussing what he was trying to accomplish and how we're, as a society, is reacting to it. And unfortunately, there's parts of our society that are not reacting in a positive way, regardless of your ideology.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we try and embrace what he was embracing and what he did, which was to reach out and communicate with the other side, with both sides, and push that farther.
Yeah.
Let's change gears a little bit.
Okay.
How do we do that? How do we go forward? How do we scale back the violence? Because there have been recent assassination attempts, and successful ones are not that common, but people keep trying it. And how do we scale that back?
Well, we started this show to talk about civility and, encourage civic discussions again.
Yeah.
To educate people on government, to understand civics better, because we both, in our former roles as elected officials, saw a lot of ignorance, and I don't mean that in the ugly way. People misinterpret that word nowadays, but they just didn't understand why we couldn't do things that they thought we could do. And the third reason we did it was to get them engaged with their government. Yeah. And I think that's the key right there. And Charlie embodied all of those things. He was civil, right? Yeah. And then he was knowledgeable. He did not go out onto these college campuses without knowing his stuff. Yeah. And he, unlike me or you, he could do it without notes in front of him, right?
Yeah.
And then he was engaged.
But he wasn't a political official.
No.
I mean, we talk about, our efforts have been to get people involved in government. He was not even involved in government. Now, he influenced people in government because his arguments were very succinct and he was articulate and they appreciated what he said. But he was actually not involved in any government. So all these discussions about him as if you're on the left, him being a fascist or a tyrant, and him on the right being protecting our freedoms and stuff, he didn't actually do any of that. He talked about it. He got dialogue going.
Yeah.
And I think we need to recognize that he was a dialogue creator.
Yeah. And engagement comes in many forms, and he was just demonstrating one of those forms.
Yep.
What he didn't do is, and I'm not picking on any personality right now, but, Rush Limbaugh, for example, had a tremendously large radio show, and it had a big reach. But in a way, Rush was preaching to an audience that wanted to hear that kind of talk.
Right. You had to tune into him to listen to him. Right.
And you didn't engage Rush. Rush engaged you, and Rush spoke to you. Right. You didn't have a chance to speak back to Rush or to counter what he was saying. Charlie is unique in that Charlie was going to campuses across the nation where a lot of the students did not want to hear what Charlie had to preach.
Right.
Right. And then Charlie invited them first to come up and ask him questions. Yeah. He engaged them. Yeah. And that is how we should be. That is, I think, the first step right there is to say that I am, we're called to be salt and light, right? And we are of no use sitting here, that you and I across from each other right now, talking to each other. If we didn't do it on air, if it was just you and me sitting in your bookstore or over in my office, that's of no use to anyone. And that's what we've done today. That's what we've done for the last probably 20 years. We've gone off into our silos and we commiserate with our friends about the Democrats or the Republicans. Charlie was talking to the people that needed to hear his message. Yeah. He wasn't preaching to the choir. Yeah.
And we need to start bringing more of that back.
Absolutely.
I know a lot of times from a political perspective, a lot of Republicans talk about we don't know how to reach the inner city community or the immigrant community. And it always sort of drove me nuts because I was like, go there.
Yeah.
Go there and talk to them. Why aren't any of you guys going out there and doing a speech in, South San Antonio?
Right.
So we need to do more of that.
Yeah.
And, we talked about recently about the Civic Roundtable.
Right.
Part of that is going to be bringing people from opposing sides to discuss things. Yeah. So hopefully we'll do a little bit of that ourselves. About the violence, though, we all say, oh, well, we would never do that. Both sides say that. And both sides say, well, the other side started it, or the other side is worse. How do we convince the other side, whichever side you're on, to stop doing the violence that we think that they're doing? I don't know how to do that. That's my question, is how do you convince somebody to stop calling Charlie Kirk a Nazi?
Well, I think the first step is changing our vocabulary and the way we think about the other side. Mm-hmm. Ronald Reagan said once that we don't have political enemies, we have political opponents.
Yeah.
So instead of saying scumbag Democrats or Nazi Republicans, it's my fellow Americans are in disagreement about this issue. My brother doesn't agree with me about X, right? It's not a Democrat or a Republican, it's your neighbor. It's your fellow brother in Christ, your fellow sister in Christ. Or even if they don't believe in Christ or God, they're still your brother, your sister, your fellow American, your fellow Texan. It's changing your perception of them and changing the words that you use to describe them. It's somebody that needs your love, that deserves your respect and your communication, the ability to communicate with you. I think that's the first step.
So people on the right would like the people on the left to stop calling certain people Nazis and fascists. Do you think that the people on the left would like the people on the right to stop calling Ocasio-Cortez various names, such as communist dictator, wanting to rule the world, stuff like that?
Absolutely.
So we can step back ourselves, no matter which side we're on. There's a way. There's a place where we can step back a little bit and stop name calling and whatnot.
I think AOC is a great example. I'm glad you brought her up, because on the right, I see memes. Oh, she's got big teeth, or they make fun of her, right?
Dehumanize her.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I think, politically speaking, I think she's wrong on a lot of her ideas. A few times she said some things that I thought, we actually have a shared belief in that. It doesn't happen often, but it's happened, probably. I couldn't even put a measure on it, but there have been a couple of statements, and I'm going to go back and look for them, where I thought, wow, that's interesting. I agree with you. That's where we need to start with everybody. So, okay, where's that common ground?
Yeah.
I hate the argument, well, she ran for office, so she deserves it, right? Like you run for office and somehow people are allowed to put a target on your back and go after you. No, absolutely not.
That's interesting. One of the things we talk about are our Bill of Rights, and we say the government can't oppress us in this way and that way and the other way. But do we also, as a society and as individuals and citizens, is it incumbent upon us to give each other those rights? Is it incumbent on us to say, okay, you have free speech, and I will not try and stop that? The Constitution is only about the government. It's not about individual relations and societal relations. But if we don't individually also say, I'm going to give you the right to say whatever you want, then it's no longer in our culture. And if it's no longer in our culture, it'll leave our government.
Right.
Because culture drives it all. And we do need to extend those freedoms and rights individually to other people.
Well, here's the thought that came to me just before we walked in here. I was thinking, as a conservative, as a Republican, if I believe, and I do, that the freedoms that I enjoy in this country that are written into the Declaration of Independence are God-given rights, meaning they cannot be taken away, then who am I to suppress them in anyone else?
Right. Yeah.
If they're given by God, then who am I to think that I can shout somebody else down and tell them, just because I don't like their opinion, because I think that their ideas are socialist in nature, or they're filled with hatred, I am going to embrace my free speech, and I'm going to embrace their right to have free speech as well.
Yeah.
Whether I like it or not.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I'm going to bring out a couple of books here. Usually I have to have one book, but I've got two today. And this is a book I probably mentioned before. Whenever we do our different civil Bill of Rights discussions, I use this as a reference. It's called Behind the Bill of Rights by Bill Norton and Jeremy Nelson. We have it at the Boerne Bookshop. It's a great resource for just learning about the civil rights and the history of them and how they've sort of played out over time. We've got it at the Boerne Bookshop. Another book that I've got here is sort of a playbook for people that I don't agree with. But I carry it because it's sort of an important book. It's called Ruled for Radicals by Saul Alinsky, and a lot of you have probably heard of this. But it talks about how to divide a society, tribalize them, dehumanize your opponents so that you can take power away from them. And I totally disagree with this person, but it's an important book. And so we have it, and if you want to learn about how some people view the acquisition of power, we've got it there. Sort of one of those books that I carry just because I think it should be viewable.
One final thought before we close this up today. Read this morning, and I think it's something that should be shared, something we need to remember, especially in times like this. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And that's from Philippians 4:8. There's a lot of bad stuff going on right now that makes us angry, makes us hot, confuses us. But let's focus on the praiseworthy things.
All right. Do good. So that's it for today. Thank you, everybody. And if you missed any of this, you can always go to BoerneRadio.com and check out our podcast there, or other places too. And we will see you next week.